Coming up on this episode of Conversations with the Mayor and Council, we're talking about two key actions from Rockville's Climate Action Plan. First, we explore the city's Flood Resiliency Master Plan and how it helps identify and reduce local flood risk, and how you can do your part to help reduce and prepare for flooding. In our Conversation Spotlight, we're talking about the importance of preserving and landscaping with native plants and trees. And get this, it's easier than you think. It's all coming up right now on this episode of Conversations with the Mayor and Council. So let's start the conversation. Hello, Rockville. Welcome to Conversations with the Mayor and Council, the show where we take a closer look at the issues, initiatives, and ideas shaping Rockville's future. I'm Councilmember Marissa Valeri, and today we're talking about something that touches every neighborhood in our city, our growing efforts to prepare for climate change. And as y'all can see, I am a plant nerd. Specifically, the Flood Resiliency Plan and preservation and landscaping with native plants and trees. These two initiatives are part of Rockville's first Climate Action Plan. So what is Rockville's Climate Action Plan, you ask? Well, back in January 2022, the Mayor and Council unanimously approved Rockville's first ever Climate Action Plan. It's a comprehensive roadmap with 42 actions, 26 community actions, and 16 city actions, designed to reduce climate warming pollution and strengthen resilience, especially in neighborhoods like mine that are most vulnerable to climate impacts. And today's conversation connects the big picture planning the city is doing with the everyday actions residents can take to make Rockville stronger, greener, and more resilient. And joining me today is Principal Environmental Engineer with the city's Department of Public Works, Meredith Neely, to talk about the city's Flood Resiliency Master Plan. So let's start the conversation. Hi, Meredith.
Hi, Councilmember Valeri.
You can just call me Marissa.
Thanks, Marissa.
You're very welcome. Rockville has experienced severe storms and flooding over the years, and residents often wonder why a comprehensive flood resiliency plan has not yet been developed. So let me ask, what specific flooding challenges prompted the development of this plan?
Well, I feel like we can't talk about flooding in Rockville without talking about Tropical Storm Ida, of course, in 2021. Flood resiliency is such a key pillar of Rockville's Climate Action Plan, as you know, and specifically the Flood Resiliency Master Plan is one of the city's main actions in the plan. We all have become so familiar with climate change. It's become such an integral part of our vocabulary at this point, talking about all the extremes that we're seeing too in the climate. So not just the intense increased rainfall amounts, but also going from one end of the spectrum to the other. In 2018, Maryland had the driest year for rainfall on record, which goes back until the 1800s. And then we've got drought the last couple of years during some seasons. And of course, sprinkled in there, we also have some intense thunderstorms that continue to happen and pop up. So these extremes and this variability has made it very difficult and challenging to try to become organized in our planning and to really see a vision for what we wanted to do. The local rainfall variability during these storms as well. And everything kind of culminated in the aftermath of Ida. So the timing of all of those things, when Ida hit, of course, catastrophic flooding damage in your neighborhood, in the Twin Brook sub-watershed area, and also in portions of Cabin John. But we also know that areas to the north of the city barely had any rainfall in them that happened. And so this variability of data has made it very hard to really get a good full picture of what the city's flood risk is, and to really wrap our brains around what we can do about it and how to come up with a systematic plan that's fair and equitable, but also addresses the challenges that we have. We also have been challenged by a lack of data. We have never, frankly, had enough infrastructure data on the city's storm drain system to be able to understand comprehensively and answer questions like, what is our storm drain capacity? Where do we need more storm drains at? And where do we need to upgrade and upsize some of the storm drains?
Thanks so much for laying that out. I know this is a really complex issue. So now that we know the why, Let's talk about the how. For residents watching who want to understand the impact more clearly, how is this plan going to make the community safer from flooding?
So this plan, what will come out of this plan is things like tools, guidance, and potential projects to proactively protect Rockville. So tools that will come out of this plan are going to be based on some advanced engineering models. Those are, of course, based on the extensive data collection that I mentioned before. These tools will allow us to be able to test out Rockville's storm drain system and what happens during these storm events in a way that can look at the entire city instead of just neighborhood by neighborhood, and really try to understand how these systems are connected and how our storm drains are connected to the streams and the rivers in the city. These tools will help develop guidance, a better understanding of the where, the what, the when, where being what areas of the city truly are the most vulnerable when we're looking at everything on a citywide basis. The when, what storm conditions do these areas flood in? And under what circumstances? What does the timing look like? During what part of the storm are conditions the worst in? And then the what, how these things are connected, how their conveyance systems are connected. If we do something on the upstream side, what happens downstream? Just trying to better understand so that we can be proactive in our approach.
Absolutely. So the conversation is just getting started. Coming up, we're going to talk about how the Flood Resiliency Master Plan is taking shape, from the steps the city is taking to data being collected, and so much more. It's on the way right after this, so stay with us. Hey, and welcome back to Conversations with the Mayor Council. We're here with Principal Environmental Engineer with the City's Department of Public Works, Meredith Neely, to talk about the city's Flood Resiliency Master Plan. Let's continue our conversation on the Master Plan. We've talked about why the Flood Resiliency Master Plan is so important and how it will guide us moving forward. So now let's talk about how this plan is taking shape. There are a lot of moving parts, and the city is already doing quite a bit to protect our community from flooding as the plan develops. So tell us what Rockville is already doing to help protect the community against flooding, both now and as part of the plan's development.
Well, this project, we've divided it into 3 phases that actually go through 2027. The first phase is currently underway, which is trying to understand our existing risk. We'll be moving into the second phase later this year, which is to identify solutions and options to tackle this risk. And then moving into the third phase will be to chart a path towards a resilient Rockville. Of course, through 2027 means this is going to take a long time to do, so it's really important to emphasize that there are things that we're doing right now to help residents, including the city has a flood mitigation assistance program. We like to call it FMAP. You can find resources on our website for that program, but basically it's a reimbursement program to help residents make their houses and their yards more resilient for flooding. We also have a flooding guide for homeowners on our website. I believe it's called Go With The Flow, so it's got a very catchy name. And For the Flood Resiliency Master Plan, kind of shifting gears now, for our data collection efforts, I really want to emphasize that the data collection also involves engaging with the community. We want to get their input. We want to understand what their experiences are, and that information is going to help us to better refine our engineering models and to know where we need to collect more data at. Later this year, the data and the modeling is going to culminate into our phase 2, which will be to help identify the areas with flood risk throughout the city and to work with the community to try to prioritize those areas. We know we won't be able to fix everything from flooding, so prioritization is very important. Finally, in 2027, we'll be drafting our plan to chart the path for implementing these solutions.
That's excellent. And I know in particular the city's supporting programs to help people to either prevent flooding, or actually a lot of the folks after Tropical Storm Ida, the remnants of her, it really helped a lot of people. So I know that this is a really important program, and we're very excited to see what the next few years will bring. Still to come on Conversations with the Mayor and Council, we'll talk about some of the projects and programs that could come out of the Flood Resiliency Master Plan and how you can help shape this important plan. The conversation continues right after this. Welcome back to Conversations with the Mayor and Council. Principal Environmental Engineer Meredith Neely is with us, talking about the Flood Resiliency Plan. We've talked about the purpose of the plan and the work already underway, but people are often most curious about what this could mean in the long run. As the plan comes together, it has the potential to shape a wide range of improvements across the city. So let's shift the conversation and explore what are some examples of projects, programs, or initiatives that might come out of the Flood Resiliency Master Plan.
Such a good question. We are keeping all options on the table for this. We know that there is no such thing as a silver bullet for an answer here. There's going to be no magical solution to get us out of flooding problems. So we are going to be, of course, looking at traditional stormwater solutions, things like stormwater management ponds, underground storage vaults, also storm drains, new ones, upsize storm drains. We are also going to be looking at non-traditional solutions, though, because we know we won't be able to engineer ourselves out of this. Non-traditional solutions, like we've envisioned so far, have been things like proactive and reactive road closures, also things like flood-related signage to alert people of areas with potential to flood, and also looking at things like flood sensors, like the one that I know is in your community, and thinking about how we could use those as a strategy as well.
Of course, a plan like this isn't just shaped by data and modeling. It also relies on the voices and experiences of the people who live here in Rockville. Community input is a big part of getting this right. So let's talk about that. How are residents and community members involved in shaping the plan?
So first and foremost, we want to encourage all the community members in Rockville to check out our website, engagerockville.com/floodplan. You can take a look at our content, links for events coming up, but we also have an opportunity for you to take a look at our interactive map. You can actually map your flood experiences. Those will be very important for us to take a look at areas in our model where we could sort of validate our model results or think about where we need to make some refinements. Second of all, we also have a flood resiliency survey that you could take a look at that will help inform some of our priorities for outcomes and solutions. You can also take advantage of many existing programs that the city has. Like I alluded to earlier, we have a flood mitigation assistance program. We also have a flooding guide for homeowners on the city's website. And you can also sign up for flood insurance. You don't have to be in a FEMA flood zone to qualify for flood insurance, and it can be a great way to protect your property. You can also sign up for Alert Montgomery and Alert Rockville to get emergency alerts and notifications.
Absolutely. Those are some really great tips, and I hope that everybody at home takes advantage of those. We've covered a lot today and really gotten a clearer picture of Rockville's Flood Resiliency Master Plan, A big thank you to Meredith Neely for walking us through everything and making it easy to understand. And if you'd like to dive deeper or find out how you can get involved, be sure to visit the interactive Engage Rockville page. Up next is our Conversation Spotlight. We're switching gears to a topic I'm really excited about: native plants, environmentally friendly landscapes, and how we can all help care for Rockville's natural spaces, from creating healthier habitats to boosting the beauty of our own backyards. There's so much good stuff to talk about, and it's all on the way when Conversations with the Mayor and Council returns. Welcome back to Conversations with the Mayor and Council. In our Conversation Spotlight today, we're diving into a topic that brings beauty, biodiversity, and big environmental benefits to Rockville: native plants and environmentally friendly landscaping. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart, both as a gardener, but also as a member of the community. And joining the conversation is Shannon Philbin, Environmental Outreach Specialist with the Department of Public Works. Hello, Shannon.
Hello, I've heard I can call you Marissa.
Very true. To start us off, let's talk about the why. Why are native plants so important, not just for the environment in general, but specifically for the Rockville community?
Well, this is one of those let me count the ways situations, as I'm sure you know, and your shirt is doing a lot of the talking there. And so, we plant native plants. Those native plants are going to support wildlife and pollinators, and we need those wildlife and pollinators to create a more vibrant habitat that is going to help us better withstand the effects of climate change. So when there's heat island effect, when there's flooding, the more variety of plants and animals we have, the more our environment's going to be able to bounce back. There's also a lot of other benefits. They soak up stormwater. When there's a lot of rain, they can help catch that water. They can also help soak up nutrients and pollutants. And one of my favorite things about native plants is that they are going to be easier for eventually, as over time, as they're established, they're going to be easier for our residents to take care of. So they're going to need less fertilizer, they're going to need less water, and they're going to need less pesticides. And all of those benefits together are really important for an urban and suburban city like ours, where we can have these patches of wildlife that, as we encounter more effects of climate change, it's really going to make us just a more sustainable and vibrant city. And like you said, they're also beautiful.
How does the city help residents plant native species and create more environmentally friendly landscapes?
Great question. So we're also walking the walk instead of just sharing the great news about native plants. But we have a program we're really proud of called the Rainscapes Rebate Program, which directly gives residents check rebates after they've installed native trees, native plant gardens, rain gardens. We've also recently expanded to green roofs and a few other stormwater, what we call small scale stormwater solutions that are really going to help residents with that pollution and stormwater that we talked about. We also have a tree giveaway. We give away free trees every year in the fall. We're really excited about that. It's one of our most popular programs. It's something that our staff loves to do. So if you're looking for a good easy step, it's just planting a tree. Not only that, we also have a plant sale. The Croydon Creek Nature Center every spring has a plant sale in May, which is that's one of my favorite ways to get native plants is local plant sales. So we've created a whole section on our website. If you just Google backyard habitats in Rockville, you'll be able to find those web pages with all these resources we've compiled, because we know it can be hard to find those resources. So
where can residents buy native plants, and where can they find reliable resources and guidance for planting them?
So like I said, we have a native plant sale. The first thing I like to suggest to residents is to find a local native plant sale, because that's your best bet for finding the natives. They're usually run by organizations like the Nature Center or local watershed alliances or master gardeners who are really going to be very knowledgeable about what's native and what's not. So I always suggest that. Croydon Creek's plant sale, Montgomery Parks also has plant sales, and like I said, master gardeners as well. You can also purchase native plants online. I just advise everybody kind of be careful with where you're ordering them. Make sure you're getting an actual native. There's also a growing movement towards plant swaps, and like there's a lot of really cool Facebook groups where you can, in your neighborhood, and you can find, okay, I have, this rudbeckia, okay, I've got some moss floss, let's trade. There's a lot of that stuff going on too. But yeah, start with local native plant sales. You can also approach, your big box stores. They're not going to be as knowledgeable generally about what's native, but I feel like the more we ask them for it, the greater the chances they might to start carry them.
What would you say to folks who might be new to gardening or don't have a big yard or a yard at all? What are some simple, easy ways that residents can bring native plants indoors into their home or utilizing a smaller outdoor space?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one of the things I like about native plants as a solution for climate change is they're really accessible to anyone. Like not everyone can put solar panels in, not everyone can have a LEED certified building, but anyone can get a native plant and find a place to put it. And so if you have yard space, any kind of yard space, one of the things I like to recommend that you mentioned is just purchase a native tree or get it from our tree giveaway. Start there. Trees, you just buy one tree, you put it in, and it's a really just good gateway to introducing you to the benefits they have. Trees are also so important for our pollinators and for our butterflies, which then in turn affects the whole food chain of our wildlife. So start with one tree, or pick a small plot of land on your yard. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to install a wildflower meadow. You can pick one pocket. A lot of native plant suppliers are creating these garden kits, which I think are nice, and they pair a few different plants that go well together. And if you don't have a yard space, one of the things, you can just use a container. There's a lot of native plants that do really well in containers, which I'm sure you know, but like, so we have, at my house, I have moss phlox in a big container that's doing really well. Black-eyed Susans, I've even had different grasses like sea oats just kind of volunteer in some of my planters, and I just leave them there. So that's where I would start. Like you said, start small. Yeah, that's a really great way to do it.
Definitely. And we were talking earlier, I am getting some of my pussy willows ready.
Yes, I love them.
Spring.
So cute.
They are going to, they have wonderful shoots already, so I'm excited for that. Yeah. So beyond planting, there are so many ways people can help support native species and boost biodiversity right here in Rockville. What are some other actions that residents can take to support native plants and help strengthen our local ecosystems?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because as I know you're also passionate about non-native invasive plants and what we can do about them. So, the flip side to planting natives is you have to make room for the natives. So in order to do that, a lot of times we have to remove non-native invasive plants that can take over really quickly. And so we have a really amazing program, the Rockville Weed Warrior program, which they go out weekly and they host these public work days in city parks where you can help remove non-native plants from the city. And this not only gets you outside, gets you learning the plants and how to remove them, but then it's knowledge that you can take back to your property or, even your community. If you've got, a private community you can work on to kind of, not just plant the natives, but kind of create a healthier, resilient habitat. I also recommend checking out some of the native plant gardens that are on city public property. The Croydon Creek Nature Center has a native plant garden. And as I mentioned, those Weed Warrior volunteers worked very hard in Dawson Farm Park to create this fenced-in native garden, which is really amazing. It's got woodland plants, which are some of my favorites because I have a very shady yard. Woodland plants. And I think that's also really good inspiration if you just go out and you're in the woods and you're in the parks and you can just kind of see what these plants look like. And I think that can be an inspiration to do more.
And that wraps up our conversation spotlight. Thank you for sharing, Shannon, how native plants and environmentally friendly landscapes can make a real difference here in Rockville. Between this discussion and what we learned earlier about the Flood Resiliency Master Plan, it's clear that both city efforts and community actions play a really important role in building a more resilient, sustainable Rockville. Thank you to our guests from the Department of Public Works, Meredith Neely, Principal Environmental Engineer, and Shannon Philbin, Environmental Outreach Specialist. Let's rise together and keep the conversation going. You can connect with us on social media, the City of Rockville on Facebook and on Instagram, and at Rockville411 on X. And check out our newly redesigned website. It's your digital door to Rockville. Head to rockvillemd.gov. And that's a wrap on this episode of Conversations with the Mayor and Council. I'm Councilmember Marissa Valeri. Until next time, Rockville.